Continuing with what we did last week to open up Thursday's show, we are going to start off today with me giving you guys my top 10 teams in the NFL right now. And the key term in that is right now. I want you to understand that these rankings could totally change. They're up in the air. But right now, entering week 5, these are going to be my top 10 teams in the NFL. And I'll explain to you why. And I think the crazy thing for me is that for the first 2 weeks that I've done this list, there have been many teams that I've been had to leave off of the top 10 that I think are really good and quality football teams, but only 10 teams can make the list. I think the top of the NFL right now is that good and that talented. So without further ado, we'll hit the music. Here are my top 10 teams in the NFL right now going into week 5. At number 10, with a 3-1 record, is the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens are a team that has not had an easy start to the season, They had all of the injuries going into training camp. They have looked very banged up at multiple points throughout this season. But one thing you could say about Lamar Jackson, even though he has his flaws, and over the last couple of years, he's had some trouble winning in the playoffs, but one thing remains consistent with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. All they do is win in the regular season. And I feel like in an AFC where there is so many good teams, right? We're going to get to them in a little bit, but Buffalo and Kansas City and the Chargers and the amount of talent they have, I feel like at some points the Ravens are that forgotten team in the AFC just because of how good their quarterback is. He is good enough to carry this team and win games by himself. They have a running game by committee right now with Latavius Murray and Le'Veon Bell. Their defense is still totally banged up. But hey, going into Denver in week 4, off a big-time win where a lot of people expected you to let down a little bit going on the road into a tough environment at Mile High, I was impressed with how the Ravens really were able to control that game against Denver from start to finish. And Lamar Jackson is a winner. Coach Harbaugh is a winner. That's all they do, and I totally understand it wasn't the most ideal circumstance going on when they had the whole comeuppance about the 100-yard rushing streak, and Vic Fangio really wasn't happy about it. But hey, Baltimore just wanted to get the 100 yards. I don't think it matters that much. If you really have a problem, then stop them. The Ravens are a winning organization. They're one of the best organizations in the NFL. They're my number 10 team right now. At number 9, not only will we be staying in the AFC, but also in the AFC North. And right now, my number 9 team in the NFL is the Cleveland Browns. And look, I wanted to say this. Cleveland's defense is legit. Last year, the reason primarily why Cleveland was so good was because of their offensive line and their just ability to control the running game and the line of scrimmage. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, they really put their quarterback in a good position to succeed. But this year, they're dominating on the line of scrimmage in the trenches, but it's their defensive line. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, their performance against the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday in week 4 on the road, shutting down that Viking offense was really, really impressive. That's a good job by Cleveland, but here's the issue. I should have them higher. I just don't know if I trust their quarterback. I really don't. Baker Mayfield is a guy who was drafted number 1 overall, and I think he's been put in a good position to succeed with this Cleveland team, They only had to score, 14 points in order to get the win at Minnesota, and he did that. That's fine, but if the Browns are going to want to win games, we saw it in week 1 against a team like Kansas City, and this week against the Chargers, I'm going to be curious to see how Baker does. There's certain games where you just flat out need your quarterback to be able to make plays. And whenever that does happen for Cleveland, I'm not sure if their quarterback's going to be able to do that. I like Baker Mayfield. He's not terrible. I think he's a quarterback that could win games for you against bad competition when you have this much talent around him. The problem is, like we saw in week 1 against Kansas City, there are going to be certain games where you need your quarterback on 3rd and 8 to sit back in the pocket and make a big play. And the couple times we've seen Baker Mayfield in that position throughout his career, where it's clear, given the game circumstances, that the Browns just need him to step up and make a big-time throw, we haven't seen yet that he is capable of doing that. I think that limits Cleveland's ceiling a lot. Their defense has been really good, but I'm going to have them at number 9 right now, just because I'm not really sure about their quarterback, which makes me not entirely sure about their long-term ceiling. At number 8, I'm going to have the Green Bay Packers. And this is another team that, going into this list, I plan on having them within the top 5 because I think they're playing phenomenal football right now. I just think there are other teams that are better. And that's how crazy the top of the NFL is right now, that I'm going to have Green Bay at number 8. Look, Green Bay was a team that we saw what happened to them week 1. That was an embarrassing effort. And given everything that happened with Aaron Rodgers over the course of the offseason, it was perfectly reasonable to just look at the Packers and say, this is a team that has opened the season playing like they don't care. And there were plenty of reasons to worry. However, one thing remains clear. In a similar way to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens and their just natural ability to win football games, I actually think you could say the same thing about the Green Bay Packers and their franchise ever since Matt LaFleur has taken over as head coach. All they do is win during the regular season. And Aaron Rodgers, the way he was able to go out there on Sunday Night Football and dominate the San Francisco 49ers, making those last couple big-time money throws to Devontae Adams late in that game. And then in Week 4 against Pittsburgh, I get it, the Packers didn't play the perfect football game. But at the same time, there was never really a moment in that game where, from a Packers perspective, I felt worried. And their defense, which didn't play well the first 2 games of the season this year, has actually improved and looked much better throughout the last 2 weeks. Joe Barry, a guy coming from that McVay staff, was a question for me after the first 2 games as Packers defensive coordinator, but he's had his unit ready to play. I give him credit for that. The Packers are a team that people forgot about just because of how bad they played in Week 1, and I totally understand. This regular season doesn't mean much for Green Bay if they could just find a way to make the playoffs, but hey, they look good, and this Packer team, it's all out in front of them. They could easily find themselves in the Super Bowl. That's how good number 12 at quarterback is, and he's not a distraction. You could tell just how much he loves the game of football. He is all in, ready to go with these Green Bay Packers. I have Green Bay as my number 8 team in the NFL right now. At number 7, and this is going to surprise some people, how do you have the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers this low at number 7? And I'll say this, in the playoffs, odds are I will have a team led by Tom Brady much higher than number 7 on this list. The thing is, over the last couple weeks, I've seen some possible weaknesses of vulnerability, areas of weakness, I should say, when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 1, their secondary is shot, and I'll give them credit. When you have a quarterback like Tom Brady that could just do anything to find a way to win you football games, most likely in the end you're going to come out successful. Looking at that game against the New England Patriots, I didn't come out of it thinking, wow, Tampa Bay did whatever they could to win. I just thought, from a talent perspective, Tampa Bay had the clear advantage over New England, and they squeezed every ounce they could out of that talent, considering the weather situations, to somehow, some way, get the Buccaneers a win. And even with that being said, New England wasn't a team that was built to take advantage of the Buccaneers' weaknesses in the secondary. They signed Richard Sherman, but still, with Murphy Bunting and Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean banged up, they had interest in Stephon Gilmore. He obviously goes to Carolina. That's a good pickup for the Panthers. But I think Tampa Bay, unlike last year, they're finally dealing with some injuries, and I think it could cost them. I still think they're the best team in the NFC North. I still think they're a team that could very realistically find themselves back in the Super Bowl. I just don't know how long their defense, especially in the secondary, could hold up with all the injuries. And we saw them on the same field against a team like the Los Angeles Rams. It really wasn't that close. I have Tampa Bay right now as my number 7 team in the NFL. At number 6, this was a team that going into the season, I really didn't expect to have on my top 10 list at all. And that is the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys, we all knew going into the season, right? They were one of the more talented teams in the league, and there was really no excuse for them not to win the NFC East based on the amount of talent they had. But there have been a lot of things that throughout 4 games have gone right for Dallas that going into the season were question marks. Dak Prescott at quarterback, coming off of the serious ankle injury and the shoulder injury that he was dealing with in training camp, he has looked really good throughout the first 4 games of the season. He is playing like one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And we know the weapons. Ezekiel Elliott, he's washed. No, he looks pretty good to me. I think Tony Pollard is a helpful piece as well. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper catching passes. Their offensive line, once the tackle comes back while Lil Collins, will get better. And the key to Dallas has been their defense. This was the worst defense in the NFL last year, and they decided to bring in Dan Quinn. And I'll admit, that was a hire I was a little worried about just because of the fact that Atlanta was regressing when he became their head coach, and once Kyle Shanahan left, they get to the Super Bowl, and they just kept on getting worse and worse and worse, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I remember asking myself, when it came to Dan Quinn and his defenses in Atlanta, I remember saying, if you're a defensive coordinator, your unit has to be better than this. And with the improvement and the development of Trevon Diggs as a second-year corner, the drafting of Micah Parsons, making him look like a legitimate edge rusher that other offensive lines in the NFL are going to fear, Dallas right now is my number 6 team in the NFL because they're looking balanced. They have a good offense, they have a good defense, and as long as Mike McCarthy doesn't get in the way, scary stuff, Dallas right now is my number 6 team in the NFL. At number 5, I'll have the Buffalo Bills. And look, Buffalo is a team that plays in probably the biggest game of week number 5, and we're going to get into that game a little bit later with the Bills and the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. But look, the Bills went into this season with a lot of high expectations. They were a team that most people predicted to win the AFC East, especially after getting to an AFC Championship game last year. Bills fans were really excited. Now, they've played really well over the last 3 weeks. However, look at who they played. Miami with Jacoby Brissett. Give them credit. They won 35-0. They also then get the Washington football team. They looked good in that game. But we all know Washington's defense has been one of the more disappointing units in the NFL so far this season. Then they get Houston. They beat them 40-0. And the key for Buffalo is, look, their defense has been much improved. Last year, if you watch the Bills, literally the only reason why they were winning football games was because Josh Allen and that offense was electric. Now, Josh has been all right, but he hasn't really been that same guy yet. If Buffalo wants to be the best team in the AFC, which I think they could, they're going to need their defense to keep on doing what they've been doing. The problem is they faced Davis Mills, Taylor Heineke, and Jacoby Brissett their last 3 games. Let's see what they do against Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson and some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think 5 is a good spot for Buffalo right now. They're one of the best teams in the AFC, but until I could consider them the favorite, I want to see them do something that they haven't been able to do yet, and that is beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Huge game, Sunday Night Football. Buffalo, my number 5 team in the NFL right now. At number 4, and you're going to be surprised. You're going to say, Zach, how do you not have this team number 1 after they just went into LA and demolished the Rams? And my number 4 team in the NFL right now is the Arizona Cardinals. And look, I may have been wrong on the Cardinals. I'll admit, going into the season, based on really how the last 2 years have played out since Cliff Kingsbury has taken over, and really his whole history as a head coach, that was the biggest game he has ever won going into SoFi Stadium on Sunday and beating the Los Angeles Rams on the road. And the final score was 37-20, Cardinals. It really wasn't that close. I'll give Arizona credit. Their defense looks much better this year than it did last year. Being led by Chandler Jones and Isaiah Simmons and Budda Baker, that defense looks legit. But offensively, they might have the best offense in the NFL right now. Kyler Murray is a legitimate video game character who puts up video game numbers, and their offense has improved. I didn't love the signing of A.J. Green during the offseason. I didn't necessarily know how much football he had left in the tank, but it's clear that with this Arizona Cardinal offense, he looks rejuvenated. Also, the draft of Rondale Moore, man, that looks like a really good pickup. Rondale Moore is a nice, explosive young receiver who can make big-time plays for this Arizona Cardinal team. Chase Edmonds and James Conner look like a pretty nice 1-2 running back combination, and Cliff Kingsbury at least has his team playing hard. What I was so impressed about was Arizona going into this Rams game. Like, they could have easily lost to the Vikings if Greg Joseph could have hit a 37-yard field goal. Arizona easily could have lost to Jacksonville if Trevor Lawrence just doesn't throw that inexcusable pick six. And by the way, Byron Murphy, that's another part of this Cardinal defense who is balling out right now. That kid is a young stud. Arizona's defense has a lot of nice core key young pieces that could be key for the future and even this year. But look, Arizona's very talented. That's never been the problem for them. The problem has been being able to put it all together and play consistent football. We saw it last year. Arizona got off to a great start. However, throughout the season, they just lost a handful of games that they could not have lost. They couldn't afford to do it. And going into LA and beating the Rams, that's a good start to your 2020-21 season, and to make a statement early in the month of September and say, look, we are here to play. We are one of the best teams in the NFL with one of the best offenses in the NFL. We could do damage. That's a great sign. My only question is, could this style of offense be able to be consistent when the weather gets cold against some of the best defenses in the NFL? The fact that we're able to go on the road to LA and do that was a really impressive job. The Arizona Cardinals right now are one of the 5 best teams in the NFL, and I think they could only improve once they keep getting better and play some of the better teams in the NFL. Kyler Murray, that kid is a stud. Speaking of another team that has a young quarterback as a stud, and this is another team also where you're going to be like, wow, Zach, you might have put them a little too high. But the Los Angeles Chargers, in my opinion, are the 3rd best team in the NFL right now. The balance of this team is just super, super impressive. With Justin Herbert, a starting quarterback that they got with the 7th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. We know the story. Miami, they pass on Herbert for Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert, after a year and 4 games, looks like he could be the best young quarterback in the NFL, maybe number 2 behind Patrick Mahomes, but there's not that big of a difference. And Brandon Staley, what he has been able to do in such a short amount of time, coming to this Los Angeles Charger team, really establishing throughout that locker room what he wants to do, it is translated quickly. It looks like the players really enjoy playing for him, and Brandon Staley has been a coach that has had big-time talent on his team before. He was the linebacker coach in Chicago for Khalil Mack. He coached Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald with the Los Angeles Rams, and now with the Chargers, he has came in and has been aggressive, and already the Chargers have won some games that historically, in the past, with Anthony Lynn and Phillip Rivers at the helm, where you're just like, wow, how did we lose that game? The Chargers have been the one team in the NFL during recent years that has done literally whatever they could to just find a way to lose in the most heartbreaking fashion as possible. And I think when you look at this Los Angeles Charger team right now, there's a different vibe. The way they were able to handle the Raiders on Monday Night Football, I know the Raiders had a little bit of a run there, but the Chargers were really able to silence that quickly. It was super impressive. And the way Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, there is so much high-end talent on this Charger team. They scare me. They are my number 3 team in the NFL right now. When it comes to the top 2, look, the only reason why I still have these teams in my top 2 is because the league is so close at the top right now that the way I made these rankings were, in a big game, who would you predict to win if these 2 teams were playing on a neutral field? And for that reason, the Kansas City Chiefs are still my number 2 team in the NFL right now, and in my opinion, they are still the best team in the AFC. Look, they've lost to Baltimore. They've lost to the Chargers, and their defense is not ideal. It's really not good. It has to get better if this team wants to win football games going forward. However, in their Week 2 and Week 3 losses, they had some fluke turnovers, at least 2 or 3 throughout the course of that game. And one thing I know about Kansas City is that their offense is too good to be doing that consistently. And even in those games where they couldn't stop turning the ball over, they easily could have won. Edwards-Helaire, if he doesn't fumble against the Ravens, odds are the Chiefs win that game. Against the Chargers, not only did they turn the ball over multiple times, but they did it in the red zone. Those aren't things I expect to happen again on a consistent basis. And Kansas City, all they do is win. They showed out, balled out against Philadelphia in Week 4. Once again, I think their defense needs to get a little better. But hey, against Buffalo, if they could find a way to win this game on Sunday Night Football, I do think there's a good chance the narrative will be, okay, Kansas City is back. They are once again the favorite in the AFC, and that game being at Arrowhead, Mahomes and Reed, they are the team I trust right now a little bit more than Buffalo and the Chargers in the AFC going forward. But hey, the Chargers are right behind them. The Chargers were able to find a way to go into Arrowhead and win. They deserve credit for that. I still trust Kansas City and that offense as long as Andy Reid, Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey are there. Chiefs, my number 2 team in the NFL right now. And my number 1 team in the NFL right now is the Los Angeles Rams. And I get it. That's hard for me to say after they just got smacked around by the Arizona Cardinals. And by the way, the Rams have a Thursday night game tonight that I think they could very well lose. Seattle at home on a Thursday night. We know historically how good the Seahawks have been in prime time at home in recent years. But I just think the Rams, with the combination of Stafford and Kupp and McVay, with that defense, they are still the best team in the NFL in my opinion. I think they played the best game we've seen an NFL team play in week number 3 against Tampa. And then going up against Arizona, it was just a little bit of a letdown spot. Arizona deserves credit. They weren't in my top 10 last week. I catapult them all the way up to number 4 this week. Kyler Murray, he showed us he could win a big game on the road in a tough environment. Just when it comes to the Rams, I'm a Sean McVay believer. I think Matthew Stafford really fits his offense well in terms of expanding the playbook. Their defense has 2 guys that opposing coordinators are going to have to game plan for that could just flat out wreck a game. Not a lot of other teams in the NFL have that. So with that being said, I will still have the LA Rams as my number 1 team in the NFL. They will be at Seattle this week, Thursday Night Football. Not an easy game to say the least, but I just still believe in Stafford and McVay. I get it. That game against Arizona, it didn't look good for their chances of being the number 1 team in the NFL, but I just don't expect that to happen very often to this Rams team. We saw with Tampa Bay, every team is allowed to have a bad game, and even though their defense isn't perfect, there aren't many flaws on this Rams team. They have enough top-notch game-breaking talent for me to have them as my number 1 team in the NFL right now. So to recap, at number 10, I'll have the Ravens. Number 8, Cleveland. Number 9, Cleveland. Number 8, Green Bay. Number 7, Tampa Bay. Number 6, Dallas. Number 5, Buffalo. Number 4, Arizona. Number 3, the Chargers. Number 2, the Chiefs. And number 1, the Rams. Zach's top 10 going into week number 5 of the NFL season.